I don't really think that he's of a caliber to be anyone's running mate at this point.
Lakeland, they're giving me the signal that they're about to start in Denver. Thanks for the call. I've got to let you go. We take you live to Corrigan Hall in Denver, Colorado.
And I'm from El Paso County. Those are my friends. The reason that I'm here tonight is to share with you a little bit about why I'm involved in the Perot campaign and why I feel the way I do about the gentleman. I've never been political before, and I think there's probably many of you who can identify with that. The funny part is that I don't consider myself political now. Before I moved to Colorado, I lived in Houston. And I'm a little embarrassed to admit that coming from Texas, I didn't know anything about Ross Perot. I saw On Wings of Eagles on television, and I thought it was a great storyline, and I really liked the leading man. Then I found out it was a factual account of his rescue of his employees. And that really struck home because I'd worked in the corporate world, and I didn't see that kind of dedication and loyalty, usually on both sides. So for me, I can sum it up. Dedication to his people. I think that's very important in a leader. Straight talk and common sense. You're not here to hear about me, but this sort of puts it in context. I used to be a counselor at a financial institution. People would come in and say, gee, I'm in debt and I don't know what to do. The first thing you do is you sit down and you say, there's two ways to get out of debt. You raise your income and you reduce your expenses. And if you want to get out of debt really quickly, you do both. Ross Perot's the only candidate that I've heard say that. I admire his values, his sense of dedication, as I said, to his employees, and I also like his accent. I promised a friend that I would say this to Mr. Perot. I want to thank Ross Perot for allowing himself to be the tool by which America is going to forge a new economic beginning. And finally, like many of you, I'm sure you've given a lot of thought to this campaign and who you're going to vote for. My mind was made up after the last debate when I heard George Bush and Bill Clinton say, well, I agree with Mr. Perot. I also heard him say, Ross is right. But for me, I want to say that Ross is right on. Thank you.
I'm Brent Berkey, Ouray County Coordinator. I can certainly commiserate with Admiral Stockdale at this point. There have been times up on the face of Long's Peak, a couple of thousand feet off the ground, where it was a whole lot tamer and easier to do than what I'm doing right now. Let me tell you about my motivation by telling you about my county. Be fun. We're a really rugged mountain community. Timber, ranching, and mining are the historic roots of Colorado as they are of the county. We're generations deep in this county. People have been there for 4, 5, 6 generations. I have a neighbor, to give you an idea, who is 3rd generation as a gold miner. His forebears helped carve out paths on cliff faces, haul in ponderously huge pieces of equipment, establish mining operations. Nothing fancier than their hands did they have, maybe a mule. They lived, worked, and died in unbelievably harsh conditions. Those people are still around. I knew a couple of brothers who came here with not much more than guts, dedication, and a dream. They logged with horses. They bartered for food that they ate. They and their families lived together in a communal sort of living condition. Through perseverance, they became successes. Another neighbor of mine, he's a rancher. When he was 14 years old, his father died, left him without a place to live, no one to lean on, no financial resources. He took the piece of property that he had inherited and built that into a very successful cattle ranch. These are just a few examples of dedicated Americans who didn't know, I can't, that's too hard, or that's impossible. We in Uray County are now challenged as never before. Mining, timber, and cattle are in decline. We're doing everything we can to survive and to change, just as much of the rest of the country is. The point is that we continue to accept challenge and get the job done. We do that by participation, hard work, responsibility, and goals. 20% of our county signed Mr. Perot's petition. We did it because we know that he and his program embody ultimate success for America. That is why we are all here tonight, I think. Together, united we stand, America. Vote for Ross.
Those were great words to share, and it's because of the people of that caliber leading these counties in Colorado that 1 week ago today, and I say this to our friends in the media that they might record it, that in Colorado we conducted a straw ballot of 3,479 people, and the results, it was done without any identification or anything from Ross Perot supporters or any other supporters. The results came in that Ross Perot now leads in Colorado with 38%. And I suspect that'll go a little bit higher tonight. Just to finish the total down, Governor Clinton was at 35 and the president was at 22. The balance was undecided and going. I don't know about you, but I'm starting to get very anxious to hear the words from the man himself. And he'll soon be here with us. He'll soon be here with us. At this time, I would like to introduce one of our good friends from Mesa County over in Grand Junction, Kathy Ray, who has composed this song and has recorded it, United We Stand. It's based on our organization here in Colorado and in the nation. Kathy will favor us with this song, please.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay? I'd really like to thank the people of Mesa County, the volunteers who encouraged me to go ahead and sing my song, and I just hope you enjoy it. It's called United We Stand, America.
Stand up tall and let our voice be heard. We will fight for what is right for every American. We will put our country first when we take our vow to serve. We are precious land. We hold our freedom dear. We love our fellow man. We need our leaders to stop being partisan torch of hope for our future. We will teach our children to know right from wrong. We're gonna make the sacrifices for our nation before our land of liberty is gone. We are Americans. We love this precious land. We hold our freedom dear. We love our fellow man. We need our leaders to stop being partisan. Hand in hand, America, united we stand. Hand in hand, America, united we stand. America, united we stand. Yes. Thank you.
Guess who's here? At this time, it gives me privilege and a pleasure to introduce to you Chris Denning, who will introduce our speaker. Chris is a single mom in Estes Park. And one of our, one of our really terrific volunteers. The words aren't there to say, but let's introduce Chris Denning.
You know, I coordinated the campaign drive in Estes Park, and I thought we had great support up there, but this is pretty good. And I know we didn't have this kind of press coverage, so I'm really excited. The first time I saw Ross Perot on Larry King Live, I heard him talking, and he made sense. And he sounded like he was telling the truth, and I thought, oh, I'll listen to this. And then he started talking about the deficit, and I thought, this is really interesting. Nobody ever does this, and when they do, the TV's never around to watch it. But when he started talking about my kids, I was at attention, and I realized then that the issue wasn't just a deficit, but it was an issue of stewardship and taking responsibility for giving something back to my kids better than what we had created, and that's why I got involved. So, you know, people are still telling me I may be throwing away my vote, and I think, you know, a year ago, the president had a real high popularity rating, and if you had said, yeah, but the week before the election there's going to be Ross Perot closing the gap, people would have looked at you like you were crazy. It's a week before the election and we're closing the gap. With my help and with your help and with Mr. Perot's help, we can take this country back and give it back to our kids. Please help me welcome the next President of the United States, Mr. Ross Perot.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. There you go. Thank you very much. It's a privilege to be back in Colorado. One of the most memorable days of my life was the rally when you turned in your petitions right here. When you think how hard you and millions of others like you worked across this country to get those petitions signed and how far you've come, it's very, very important that we finish the task and just blow the top off this thing next Tuesday. We've made many trips to your great state. Our family has nothing but happy memories. And now I would like to introduce Margot to all of you. Margot, please come up. Now, did you have an opportunity to see the television show of Margot and the 5 children? Do you think that Margot would make a first lady that all of America could be proud of? After seeing all 5 children, could you understand why they call her Super Mom? Do you think those 5 children would be good role models for your children? I sure do. Thank you very much. How do you sit up? Well, to get them, you're stuck with me. Okay, let's get right into it. Are you ready to put America back to work? Are you sick and tired of having a government that ships whole industries overseas? Can you and I all agree that if we're going to remain a great nation, if we're going to remain a superpower, we must be an economic superpower first? You got 3 choices next Tuesday. Thank you. Thank you. Now then, we're going into a 2-minute drill starting tonight, okay? Everybody here needs to get 5 other people to join this army, and it's over. Now let's think pragmatically about it. You got one candidate from a rural state whose principal industry is raising chickens. You got another candidate whose philosophy is if you don't do anything, things will get better. You've got two candidates that were funded and paid for by PAC money, foreign lobbyists, and special interests. And your candidate doesn't belong to anybody but you. Thank you. Thank you. Is there any question in your mind that we can make the words "Made in the USA" the world standard for excellence once again? We got to be shipping stuff to the rest of the world, not bringing it in here. You know that, and I know that. We're shipping whole industries overseas, and we're going to lower paid jobs for our people, and we're destroying our children's dream, and that's what this campaign is all about. Let's just look at a few. Now, first off, if you're frustrated, I don't blame you, because with $4 trillion in debt, every place you look, it ought to be perfect, and our only problem ought to be to pay the bill. But the facts are it's not perfect, and we got to pay the bill. So we thought we bought a front row box seat to the Super Bowl, and the teams didn't show up. But it won't do us a bit of good to whine about it, right? Now, you're from Colorado. People came out here in covered wagons. I'd much rather have the challenge that you and I have to fix this great country than to try to get from the East Coast to Colorado in a covered wagon. Any day. You people have steel in your genes. Remember the pioneers' creed? The people who went west, their creed was, the cowards never started, the weak died on the way, and only the strong survived. And that's the way it was. We have that strength in our country. We need that strength now, and we can put our house back in order. But I can tell you, if you can live with the way things are, you shouldn't vote for me. For example, if you can live with the least effective public school system in the industrialized world, and when you and I went to school, it was the greatest public school system in the world, if you can live with that, you and I are on two different planets. Can you live with it? Can you remember in the Depression, those of you who are my age, when times were really hard and we left the doors unlocked? Now we have the most violent, crime-ridden society in the industrialized world. Now, I can't live with that. Can you live with that? We have a country where millions of innocent people have had to go to prison. They have put bars on their own windows and bars on their own doors because we have abandoned their neighborhoods to crime. Now, I can't live with that. Our neighborhoods should be safe. The children should be able to play in the streets. And you and I can fix that together. The meanest old boy I knew might have taken a pocket knife to school in the Depression. Today we have 135,000 children taking guns to school every day. What happened to America? Now, that's where we are. There's only one thing that matters, and that's let's get busy and fix it. Fair enough? Now here's the one that bothers me. The American dream is the most precious and fragile thing we have. Historically in our country, we double the standard of living of our people every other generation. At our growth rates today, it would take 12 generations. I am absolutely dedicating to getting it back to where your children can achieve dreams that you and I could only dream about. Are you with me on that? you say, why do I feel so strongly about that? Because I have children and grandchildren, and I feel so strongly about it because I came from a generation. My father had to drop out of school when he was 14 when his father died, worked as a cowboy, and was a wonderful man, a very bright man, but never had much formal education. He and my mother worked and sacrificed all their lives so that I could have the opportunities they never had, and look at what happened to me. Now that's the American dream. If anybody in this country has an obligation to all of the people in this country, I do. Because I have had so much good luck, so much good fortune, and the headaches and sacrifices that'll be involved in this activity are a small, small token repayment to this great country that's been so good to me. And that's the only reason I'm doing it. I'm doing it for you. Now then, the thing I love, do you think it's obvious you just scared the devil out of both political parties? Now, you know, depending on their mood, but at one time they said that I was crazy and anybody that supported me was crazy. And boy, have we got a lot of crazy people in this country. But even today, they're wandering around in Washington saying, well, who are these people anyhow? Now, they've taken enough polls, they ought to know everything in the world about you, but they haven't figured you out yet. You're supposed to sit home passively in front of the television set and let them tell you how to vote, right? That's the way the whole system's set up. They're just supposed to manipulate you through the media, and you're supposed to, like a little robot, go down there and pull a lever, go back home and send money to Washington and not complain that you're not getting results. That's not the way the Constitution was written, folks. Constitution says this country belongs to you, and the people that go to Washington work for you. We're this close to putting that back where it ought to be. And we can do it. But I'll tell them who you are. You're people who love this country. You're people who have good families. You're people who play by the rules. And you're people who are sick and tired of not seeing your country run for your best interests. That's who you are. They're still, now wait a minute, it's Friday, you're going to vote on Tuesday, and they are desperate to tell you how to vote. They're desperate to tell you who can win and who can't win. I love this. I love this. Let me just go on record one time tonight. We can win. Now then. Oh. Now, we didn't bring it up about who can and who can't win. They did, been talking about it for months. But tonight, let me go, having said we can win, let me go squarely on record to a group that you really need to focus on, because you need to reach out to them in a loving way. You need to reach out to all these folks who've been supporting President Bush because he can't win. Just one of those things. Just one of those things. It's not in the cards, and we need to reach out and welcome the people who have been supporting him, because they just have a few days to take some steps that would result in a dramatically better government for them. Now, you've changed television this year. You've changed the campaign forever this year. You know, when we first came out with our 30-minute shows, and I was sitting there with a bad accent going through flip charts, all of the folks, the masters of the universe up there at the, anchormen and the networks were saying, the American people won't watch that show. They have an attention span of 3 to 5 minutes. $19.5 million people watched one of the chart shows. Win, lose, or draw, we could probably get a TV series going next year. Had you noticed that Dan Quayle was using charts on the Larry King show last night? You realize none of those fellows ever went on these one-hour talk shows until just this year. They thought I was crazy. They finally figured out it was free. Now, the thing I love about this, now that makes an excellent point. Our country is a huge business, one of the world's largest businesses. We could use a little business thinking in Washington. Our problems are business problems. We've got a country deeply in debt, and we've got a country whose job base is eroding. We have two candidates who have not successfully managed money or had that opportunity. You have one candidate who's always been able to keep money in the bank and make money. And I think you know which candidate that is, when I didn't have anything. Right. Really, it's this simple. When Margot and I drove into Dallas with everything we had in the car, our philosophy was anything we wanted, we would work, save our money, we'd be all excited in anticipation for buying it, and when we could afford it, we'd buy it. And that's the way I've run all my businesses, and they're very liquid, and that's the way I feel we ought to run our country. Now, on Sunday and Monday, we will have enormous blocks of television time to talk to the American people. On Sunday night, well, you know, I understand you've had problems in Denver. I understand. Now, that'd be nice. Say, here's the fun thing, folks. Who owns the airwaves in this country? Isn't it interesting that you own them and problems like this exist? This is a good example of problems in our country. But now, I don't know the problems here in Denver, but that's a pattern But we will get the message through if I have to buy a station here, so don't worry about it. I'll tell you what. Okay, now then, I'll tell you, if they're not going to show this weekend, cable channel when they're on, and we'll come up, we'll work with the people in Denver, we'll have those programs on here this week, on Sunday and Monday. And now then, stay with me. On Sunday night from 5 to 6:30, your time, will be on ABC. Excuse me, 5 to 5:30 will be on ABC. We will be on for 1 hour on NBC from 5 to 6, your time. Then Monday night, the night before the big one, we'll be on all 3 networks. Now, surely one network will let you come through. Okay, 6 to 6:30 on ABC, 6 to 6:30 on CBS, and 8 until 9, 1 hour on NBC. Why are we doing this? We want every person in this country to understand what we're about, what we're trying to do, and what they can do with the magic of their vote on Tuesday. I need to ask you a question. As a businessman, I don't want to waste television time. Let me ask you one question. Did any of you see, you may not have seen it because it was blocked, the 30-minute show on creating jobs and building a business? That was on here. Now then, is that one that you feel should be run again? Okay. Okay. What about, now we've run Margot and the Family twice. Have you all met the family? Okay. We won't run that one again. How about solutions to our economic problems? Do we need to run that again? Okay. The biography, in other words, who is Ross Perot? Did you see that or not? You think we've covered that, or it's been run once? Do we need to run it again? Don't need to run it. Gee, that breaks my heart. Okay. Don't need that one. Okay, now I just want to know, so basically, we'll run solutions and we'll run creating jobs, and we got great new stuff that's ready to go for Monday and Sunday. Okay, we're taking lots of heat today. It doesn't bother me. Does it bother you? Same old story. If you can't take the heat, stay out of the kitchen, right? You all been in the kitchen since last February, so it's getting cool here in Colorado anyhow. It'll be better. Now, in this period that we're going through now, everybody out here has been labeled spoilers. Can you handle that? Now, I love that one. You know, all these boys with $1,000 suits and their blow-dried hair, and some girl telling them what to say, says, don't you realize you're nothing but a spoiler? And I says, We can't be spoilers. It was spoiled rotten before we started. That's why we started. Then they say, but do you have any experience at governing? Now I have to tell them, I don't have any experience in running up a $4 trillion debt. I don't have any experience in shipping jobs overseas. I got a lot of experience building jobs here. And most of what I don't know, I don't want to ever learn, I'll tell you that. But if you watch that jobs tape, you heard me say again, if you want to make a lot of money, listen, listen, listen to your customer and listen to the people who do the work. Now, in the first debate, I said I'm all ears, and everybody laughed. I think it's time to have people in Washington who listen to you, who are all ears. Then the last question they really furrow their brow and wonder about is, can you govern? All it takes is you and me, and we can govern. Now, can I govern without you? No. If you're going to go home after November, don't waste your vote on me. But if you stay with me, we're going to see magic. I mean, you talk about instant conversions and folks being reborn in Washington. If you send me, they're going to be focused on you with lasers saying, what do these people want? These people are the folks that send the money up there that the people in Washington spend, and they want it spent wisely for the benefit of their families and their children and the country's future. It's pretty simple stuff, right? Pretty simple stuff. Now, then the old story is, well, can you take the heat? Did you see what the neuropsychologist from Boston said after the debates? Yeah. He said, stress is blinking is very indicative of stress. Bush blinked 53 times a minute. Clinton blinked 47 times a minute. And this cur dog that the people put on the ballot, Perot, blinked 7 times a minute. So maybe it's time you just send a tough old bird up there as your servant who can take the heat and won't blink. We'll do it. Now, there's one other really serious problem in Washington. We got gridlock. President blames Congress, Congress blames the president, Democrats blame Republicans, Republicans blame Democrats. I say put them both in the blender because the only two groups there are Republicans and Democrats, and together they did every weird thing that's happened, right? Okay, now, but then the question is, can we break gridlock? We already did it, folks. Here's how. Go back to the debates. You remember President Bush in the debate saying, I agree with Ross. Then Governor Clinton would say, I agree with Ross. And I was just kind of sitting there saying, as my 6-year-old grandson would say, this is beautiful. This is beautiful. I have just seen gridlock broken. We have a consensus. I just want to make sure you understand, and I hope there is no question in your minds about my commitment to you. Okay, just to put it in Colorado terms, I have taken $60 million out of my wallet and put it on the table and spent it to give your country back to you. Now, anybody that knows me tells you I save paper clips. And let's put it in Colorado perspective. I turned down an opportunity one time to buy Vail for less than that. So every time you go down to that beautiful place to ski, just kind of laugh to yourself and says, old Ross could have bought Vail for less than he spent on that campaign. Now, I had to do it because the people who own the country don't have the massive money it takes to buy the television time and do the other things required to get the word out to the rest of the country. But together, we're doing it. Together, we're doing it. Now, if you elect me, that's right, we will. And if we can just keep these other folks from throwing their votes away, we'll have a landslide. So when you elect me, I don't belong to anybody in this world but you. And that's the way it ought to be. But now let's just put it in plain talk. All the people who work for you, you call by the first name, right? And I'll just net it out to you. Starting November the 4th, you're the boss and I'm Ross. That's it. Thank you. Thank you. Now, we're on a 2-minute drill now. The clock's ticking down. We got 2 minutes to drive the ball over the goal and win the game. Now let me define what winning the game is. I want all 50 states. If you and I are going to get this done quickly, we need that kind of a landslide. And you say, can't we settle for 48? No. Don't ever compete for anything less than the gold ring, right? 50 states. But all right, once that happens, early in the morning on November the 4th, long before the sun comes up, I'll be going to Washington. Everybody talks about the first 100 days of a new administration. We're going to be focused on between November and Christmas, because by Christmas Day, I want specific programs ready to explain to you in great detail on all the major issues that face this country. And we can do that. I will be buried with the leaders of Congress, with the leaders in the various industries and specialties involved, with President Bush and his team, I will be bringing America together. Well, you've heard me say a dozen times, a good carpenter will measure twice and cut once. We're going up there on November the 4th with a chainsaw and not measure at all and get rid of that aisle that separates the Democrats and Republicans. I don't want to hear any more about Democrats and Republicans or independents. I want to hear about American servants of the people. So we'll get rid of that aisle that separates the Democrats and Republicans. We'll be head down working together night and day for you. You're not going to get any surprises. Everything that we plan, you will know about in detail. You will know your new health care program down to the last period, comma, and paragraph. You will know everything we're going to do to stimulate jobs. And you'll know everything we're going to do to stimulate small businesses. You'll know everything we're going to do to revitalize our big shrinking corporations. And you absolutely will know everything we're going to do to capture the industries of the future for you and your children. Right now, all of our industrial competitors have specific plans to get the industries of the future. Only in our country we have no plans because the current administration says if you don't do anything, everything will work out. Well, that ain't never been true in my life, folks. Just stand back and things will work out. Well, they've stood back now and we got a mess, but we'll fix it. And there are no villains. They thought they were doing the right thing. But here's the straight word for me. Trickle down didn't trickle. Now, it just didn't work. The only thing that trickled down was misery. The money stayed at the top. We're going to fix that, and you'll know exactly how. So all of these things by Christmas, we'll be starting to brief you in detail. Before Congress comes into session at the inauguration, the first 100 days will be spent passing laws, not talking about it. Here's the fun part. Now, we're going to be very careful about everything we do because it's your money. Like health care, we'll have programs that everybody in the country is all excited about, and I don't care how you punch me around, I'm going to put my body across the railroad track to do pilot programs and debug them and make sure they're as good as we think they are before we mass produce them. This goes to, see, I've spent my life making things work, not making television appearances and getting confused that because I made a speech about it, it was done. Now, I'm going to stay very close to you. I will not be in Washington very much because if I stay very long, I'll get that way. I've got to stay close to you, and I've said again and again, Sam Walton got to be the richest man in this country, standing in the aisles of his store listening to his customers. And that's the way we'll run this country. Now, when you consider the debates, you know, they almost didn't let us in the door, and everybody was just kind of holding their nose and laughing. How do you think we did? Now, keep in mind, these old boys had rehearsed their lines for days, and literally all I did is I went over to the barber shop, talked to everybody there for a couple hours, and went up and, you know, just said what I believed in from the heart. Now, the thing you missed, and I have to share this with you because everybody was doing this with taxpayer money but me. See the debates? Everybody flew in on, you pay for the campaigns, you know that. You're paying for everybody's campaign except mine. And here's what happens with your money. Bush sent 350 advanced men, Clinton sent 200 advanced men, They had 100 telephone lines apiece. I sent 3 people. 2 of them wondered why I sent them. Now, here's even better. You say, well, gee, did you have 100 telephone lines? No, we had 1 cellular phone. 3 guys shared it. Now then, we were literally treated like alley cats in all the meetings because, you know, we weren't pure strain Republican or Democrats, just there representing millions of people. We had no vote, no voice, and my guys were good-natured about it, which is pretty good for a former Marine to be good-natured, but he was. And here's the insight. They had this tremendous debate about how big can the motor cavalcades be? And they thought, well, 48 cars apiece was about right. And they finally looked over at Mark and said, Mark, how big is Mr. Perot's motorcade? He said, we rented 1 car from Avis. Now, I know I don't have to say this to you. You know what the difference is? I was spending my money. Now, in each of those 3 cities, they shut down whole highway networks for over an hour to bring the president in and to bring Clinton in. I see that's happened here. Now, just think about it. The minute you see me shutting down highways and running red lights and having motorcycle people, unless it's a funeral, the minute you see that, you know, just come to Washington and say, Ross, you've lost it, buddy. You've been here too long. Come back out to Colorado for a few days. Now, thank you. Now, we had 3 people debating. We had 3 dressing rooms. Believe it or not, the Democrats and Republicans were in there with tape measures, measuring the dimensions, and arguing to see that their candidate got the ideal place to sit. Mark never got into it, and finally they said, Mark, do you care? He said, no, Ross just going to be here about 30 minutes, just anything's left over we'll use. You know, so, now here's the thing you'll love. Here's the thing you'll love. Grown men running for president, standing out on the stage in the afternoon, with the hairdressers and their wardrobe masters and mistresses, with the lights on and the cameras running, and no ordinary people able to see all this, holding up their shirts, their ties, their suits. We showed up about an hour before it started and just walked out there and did it. Now, the point is, all I'm trying to say to you is the process is so phony, nothing works, and that's why it doesn't work. And you need to believe in something. You need to be committed to get it done. And more than anything else, you need to understand that you're the servant and the people are the owners. And that's all lost. There are millions and millions of people out there who want to vote for me, who are teetering right on the line now, and they know it, so they're sending in Patriot missiles every day against us. You know, that's the reason for what this stuff that's going on now. They're scared to death. People are going to follow their conscience and vote for me. Now, you know, we've already covered the fact that the only way not to throw your vote away is to vote for me. And we've covered very bluntly, we've got all these fine people out there who are wonderful Americans who have been planning to vote for President Bush, who absolutely will be throwing their vote away because he can't win. And we want to bring them in. Bring them in. Funny thing happened the other day in Dallas. A couple was in a grocery store. A friend came up, asked the man, says, who you voting for next Tuesday? And he mentioned one of the other candidates. When we walked away, his wife says, I can't believe you're voting for him. And he says, well, I'm not. I'm voting for Ross. But I just didn't want him to know. Now, I love that one. See, I have never met anybody that a pollster called, and no pollster has ever called me. Interesting, right? Now, if a pollster should call you, just tell them you're not voting for me. Let's surprise them on Tuesday. Okay? Great. Now, there's an interesting thing happening this week that I just find fascinating. Day after day after day, somebody comes up with some excuse to attack my integrity. My integrity is a matter of record. My integrity was never questioned until the Republican dirty trick started after it in this June. But, let me, since we're talking about polls, I think you'll find it interesting. They're all taking polls, and they find the American people believe me and don't believe Bush. Now, and so their solution is to intensify the attack. Let me just say this, it's all silly putty. It's nothing to do with anything that concerns the American people, and I just look at it and marvel. Well, we're going to win 50 states. Everybody is going to get 5 other people to join them in voting for me. If you feel you've seen world-class television so far, just hunker down Sunday and Monday night, because we're going to be giving it to you straight. Let's net it out. We got one candidate, as you're talking to your 5 friends, whose attitude is, if I stay overseas, maybe it'll just fix itself. That's the president, good man, but he sure doesn't like to fool with domestic issues. We've got another candidate who's running a state whose population is about the size of Dallas and Fort Worth, and whose principal industry is raising chickens, and that's the truth. Now then, I don't think we want to, every time anybody says, how do you fix something, Governor? He explains how they fixed it in Arkansas. Now just listen. Well, we had that problem in Arkansas and we did this. I thought the other night in one of the debates, I should know if we adopt all these policies, the chickens will be clucking all over this country. Now, raising chickens is good honest work. We raised chickens for our own food when I was a boy. I understand raising them, dressing them, and pulling feathers off of them. But I also understand those are not high-paying jobs. And I also understand those are not jobs that will pass the American dream on to our children. The Democratic candidate is a big government proponent. Big government won't fix our problems. People will fix our problems with good leadership in Washington. They got 2 things in common. Both of them are good talkers, and neither one of them do anything. Now, if that's what you want, I'm not your man. I would go nuts up there if we couldn't fix it and do it. I am action-oriented. I am results-oriented, and don't put me up there unless you want it fixed. When you're talking to your 5 friends, let me give you some things to just kind of jog their memory, their thinking. Ask them to look at the 3 candidates and say, if you were going into combat, which of the 3 would you want at your side? Now that kind of separates it up. Let's assume all 3 lived in the neighborhood and came over one night. They all were the same economic status. and all three asked you if they could borrow money, which one would you lend money to, and which... And is there one you would not lend money to under any circumstances? Now, which one of the three candidates do you think will just look you in the eye and tell you the truth? You decide. You decide. Let's assume you had to leave the country for a year. Both parents had to leave the country for a year, and you had to leave your children with one of the three candidates. Who do you think would take good care of your children? Now, there we are. That kind of gets it down to reality. You know, if you won't loan him money, why in the world would you want him in the White House? If you wouldn't want him side by side with you in combat, why would you want him in the White House? If you don't think he'll tell you the truth, wait a minute. Which one of the, how many, let's turn it around, how many of the three would you hire to run a small business for you? Think about it. Now, we got some you might not hire to, you know, to run a fast food restaurant. They don't have any business experience. The point being, think that way. Get your friends to think that way, because if you can't trust them, if they can't perform, if they can't produce, the fact that they've got all these handlers propping them up and sending them out on stage and powdering and perfuming them doesn't do a thing to fix the problems for you, right? It's basic stuff, basic stuff. It's really simple. Are you willing to do this for your children or not? Okay. We can agree that this is nothing compared to the sacrifices of World War II, can't we? There are people here who fought in World War II. There are people like me who were teenagers in World War II. The country was never closer together, right? We were one. We've got to be one again. And it'll work. I'd like for you to think back over your life. Think of the biggest, toughest challenges you ever took on and licked. And I bet when you sit around at night talking about the past, you go back to those again and again and again, because they're some of your happiest memories. This will be a happy experience if we all go shoulder to shoulder and just do it. Just do it. Okay, well, we're in the 2-minute drill. There's no time for anybody to take a break. We got to go night and day, and believe me, I'll be going night and day. And I can hardly wait until we see the results of the initiative, creativity, and the ability of millions of Americans who just went out there and took their country back. God bless you all. One thing I got to do before I go. In 1979 was the most memorable experience of my life. I pulled together a bunch of Tigers off the who had been 10 years off the battlefield in Vietnam one day. 2 of our people were in prison in Iran. I had hoped, now all of them had wonderful battlefield records, but 10 years later they had wives, children, mortgages, house payments, all the responsibilities of young families. I sat them around the table and told them what we had to do and asked them who would volunteer. Every single person volunteered. They're like you. Every single one of you volunteered. One of those people is here tonight. One of those people is here tonight. And when the time came, here's why they did it. They did it as an act of love for two of their friends. You say, didn't you pay them anything? No. Would they have accepted anything? No. It was an act of pure love. They went halfway around the world. They broke into a fortress-like prison. They brought these men out 540 miles overland in a foreign country where they didn't look like the locals. And they all arrived without a scratch on them. Joe, where are you? Joe Poche, where are you, buddy? Where's Joe? Come on up here. Now, I'll tell you one thing. I'll tell you one thing. This guy doesn't ever blink. This guy never blinked. He had a special forces record that'll knock your eyes out. And 10 years later, he hadn't lost a bit. And when the time came to go do it, he and a great dedicated team did it. Why did I bring Joe up here? Because Joe is like you. He focuses. He figures out what you have to do, and then he does it. He didn't whine about his friends left over there. He went in and got them. Now then, that's what we have to do. Take our country back. Thank you very much.
This programming reminder to be with us tomorrow, just after 12 noon, when we take you to Detroit, Michigan, for live C-SPAN coverage of a Get Out the Vote rally with Governor Bill Clinton. In about an hour and a half later, it's off to Warren, Michigan, for live coverage of a Republican campaign rally with President Bush. That's all Thursday at 12:15 and 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time, here on C-SPAN. Now coming next, it's an Election 92 policy special focusing on the politics of education.
And you want to do something about all this extra spending that concerns Mr. Perot and me?